Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. This week on the show, we're starting our What Would You Do series again, in which we walk a hunter through a series of hypothetical, challenging hunting scenarios to see exactly how they would handle them. And today's guest is Ted Zangerle of the Hunting Public. All right, welcome back to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by First Light and their Camo for Conservation initiative. And it is that time of year again. August has arrived, and as we have done for, I think, 5 years now, every August we kick off our What Would You Do series, in which I run a great deer hunter through a series of hypothetical, difficult, challenging, frustrating, confusing hunting scenarios. Give them very specific hypothetical situations to see how they would handle them, how they would think through them, what their decision-making process is, and everything in between. So that's what we're doing here today. And we're kicking it off with a great first guest, Ted Zangerle from the Hunting Public. He is a diehard deer hunter. He has had success and experience all across the country, oftentimes hunting brand new places, hunting public, heavily pressured, tough spots, and getting the job done. So Ted has a lot to share here, an interesting perspective, I think, and something that all of us can learn from, whether we're hunting, big pieces of public land or our own back 40 or something in between. Lots of good stuff, very actionable information. So 2 very quick housekeeping things before we get to my chat with Ted. Number 1, if you have not heard, we have a totally new limited run podcast series on the Wired Hunt feed. It's called the Back 40 Podcast. It's hosted by my friend Jake Hofer. And each one of those episodes, he asks one specific burning question to 8 different expert guests. So it's a very interesting format, really interesting people that share their perspectives. Definitely go check that out. The first 2 episodes should be out by now if you're listening to this here at the beginning of August 2025. Point number 2. This hat, the new Wired to Hunt vintage whitetail hat, is quickly selling. I was over at the, I said this last week, but I'll say it again. Was at the MeatEater store the other day. They are already out of them. So if you want to grab this hat, go to themeateater.com. Go to the store page, check it out. I appreciate you repping this. Appreciate you supporting the podcast and making sure that that Wired to Hunt flag is flying strong. So without further ado, let's get to the What Would You Do gauntlet with Ted Zangerle. All right, welcome to the show, Ted.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this one because, for 2 reasons. Number 1, this is our first What Would You Do episode of the year. And we've been doing these for maybe 5 years now. And it kind of symbolizes like the real kickoff of like hunting season's coming soon. August is here. The full blown ramp up is in effect. So it's exciting from that perspective. And then number 2, it's exciting because while you have been on the Wired to Hunt podcast, it was with my buddy Tony and not me. So this is our first time getting to do a show together. So I'm excited we get to chat. I appreciate you coming on here to do this.
Yeah, for sure. This would be good to get the mindset back into rolling back into deer hunting. So I'm ready to get into it.
Exactly. And so you know what the format is. The plan here is that I'm just going to throw you in the fire. I'm going to toss out a bunch of specific, sometimes challenging, sometimes frustrating, sometimes cool scenarios.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping you can kind of walk me through what your mindset would be, how you would approach this challenge, what you would be thinking about, what you would do, how you would handle it. It just seems like oftentimes when we have these very specific scenarios and we hear how people would kind of go through this, it makes the kind of the learning opportunities really, really pop. So that's the plan.
Sure.
Are you ready to run through the gauntlet? We're just going to get right into it, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right. So here's one that I think is kind of in your wheelhouse. You guys have like a kind of a version of this many times, given the hunting style and the way you guys spend your year. So imagine that this year you are going to hunt Ohio. You've got an Ohio tag. You are tentatively planning on going there for a November hunt. But you've never been to this place before. never hunted it, never scouted it, never set foot there. And it is a piece of public land that's pretty big piece of public. You are going to get to have 1 day of scouting in the summer. Let's say sometime this month in August, you're able to carve out 1 single day to scout it before your November hunt.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly would you best use that kind of 12 hours on the ground? Let's call it August 25th. You're going to go. So you have August 25th. You've got 12 hours of daylight, let's say. How do you spend that 1 day?
Yeah, I'd probably, obviously beforehand, I'd do a bunch of scouting on the map out there, looking at a bunch of different stuff, looking at all the access points, all the roads, whatever it may be. And honestly, I'd probably look at where we turkey hunted a lot, because we turkey hunted out there a couple of years ago, and I remember seeing like a bunch of deer during the evenings. So I'd be thinking about all those past experiences and all that, and get out there, probably do a bunch of driving, looking around at stuff, looking at the fields, looking at all the trails and stuff like that, and then just dive in there. And one thing that I am trying to get better at in my scouting is picking out like specific setups when I go in the summertime. And if I can do that a little bit better going forward, I think that would help me out a lot. Because I think a lot of times I'll go into an area, scout it, but I won't like really narrow down on stuff, especially in the summertime. I'll kind of look at it real broad. And so that's one thing that I want to try and get better at, is like narrowing down my focus on like one specific spot, and then picking out a specific tree and saying, all right, on this wind, this type of condition day, I would come in, this is how I would get in there and pick that tree and just have a route planned out to get in there and hunt it. So
given that you'd only have 1 day, but you're coming back for, a week or so in November, how many spots like that would you try to have? Do you think you go into the day like, all right, I need to pick out X number? Or is it just going to be, if I come across, a banger, then I'm going to fully think it through like you just did? Like, how would you think about that?
I'd try and find as many as I could, but if you only have 1 day, you'd probably only have maybe 2 or 3 that you could find like that if you really got after it from daylight to dark, I feel like. So that might not be super realistic just having 1 day, but just being able to go out there and drive around the area, I think that helps tremendously going back into it, because then you already have an idea. Even if you don't have a specific tree you're going into, you'll have, a few different spots at the very least that you're going to want to come back to and kind of key in on. Maybe you just drive by a spot too, where I drive by a spot and I'm like, oh, this looks good. It doesn't look like it's real obvious to get in there. Or maybe like there's a spot where you got to go like straight up a hill to get up in there. That would be a spot. Maybe I don't dive in there right away, but I'd keep note of it on the map. And, middle of the day, if I'm out there hunting during the fall, I'd have that spot in mind and say, well, let's hike up there and just check it out and kind of scout our way into it and pick a spot to hunt for that afternoon if we can find something in there. Yeah. But I think that would be the main thing for just having a day in August, driving around, marking as many spots as I can that pique my interest, I guess.
What % of that day do you think would be that high level driving around, getting the landmarks figured out, getting the general area figured out? Is that like 50% of the day, quarter of the day? I ask this because I think a lot of people, when they think they've got, a short amount of time to scout, they just want to like jump in, have boots on the ground and walk. But a lot of times, folks like, I had a similar question to Aaron and Zach, and I think they kind of had a similar approach. There's a lot of importance on understanding kind of the outside in view. How much of your day do you think you would devote to that high level side of things?
I'd say probably 50% would be driving around at the very least, I think, just because depending on how big the area is too. Like,
Sure.
if you can cover it from daylight till noon, say, and then I think from that point, that's going to help you pick out the spots that you want to dive into and put boots on the ground and scout. So I'd probably drive around until I covered the whole thing, and then you never really know what that's going to uncover. I feel like a lot of times.
Yeah, so true. Okay, let's imagine we're hunting. Season's opened, and it's an out-of-state hunt, opening week of the season. You're there for a week. This is mixed private ag ground. So think like alfalfa or soybeans, something green on the neighboring private. The public land is river bottom ground. All right. The hiccup, like the kind of wrench thrown into your plans, though, is that you can't hunt the first few days of the season. So you have to show up like 3 days late. So it's opening week, but you missed the first 3 days. So, the amazing opening night when no one's been in there, like you don't get that. You have to show up after those first few days of hunting. And this is a place that historically has had hunting pressure. So this is not like some kind of secret hidey hole that no one's going to hunt. There will be people hunting those first couple days. So that's your scenario. It's opening week, but you missed the first 3 days. River bottom cover that you can hunt in the public. Green ag fields on the neighboring private. How would you approach your first few hunts on this property in this situation? Do you still hunt it like you normally would, like an early season opening week? Or are you assuming now they're not on the food, they're probably, reacting to pressure? How would you tackle this?
I'd probably saying it's 3 weeks in, or not 3 weeks, 3 days in the season.
3 days, yep.
I would think, okay, I'm going to go around and check these access points and see is there a bunch of tire tracks in there? What can I tell from just the clues on the ground? How many people have been in here? How many people have been in here? Whatever it may be. But then from there, once I figure out, find a spot that looks like there hasn't been a whole lot of people into it, and I'm imagining like a piece of river bottom that's, there's a little bit of, or quite a bit of room back there. Like you have some room to roam once you leave the parking lot. Maybe you can get deep in there ways. I'd probably from there, if I had a day or 2 or 3 days to hunt at that point, I'd think, all right, well, I'm going to just kind of ease my way into this. I'm just going to take it real slow. Maybe head in at like noon or 1 o'clock and just kind of pick my way back in there and scout and look at all the sign. And then once I start finding a little bit better sign, like rubs and good trails and whatever it may be, I'd probably set up and hunt it for the afternoon, and then just kind of take it like a stage hunt all the way back in there. If I was just going to focus on that one specific river bottom piece, because like you said, they're probably not going to be coming out to the food at that point. So then, or in daylight, so
yeah,
I'd just kind of pick my way back in there. And I feel like that's something we do all the time. And that's one of my favorite ways to hunt. If you have a spot where you're like, there's a buck back in there somewhere, or several bucks maybe, and just kind of play detective back in there for a couple days, and just kind of, you start seeing a little bit of sign, you start running into a few deer here and there maybe, and then set up and try it. And if you don't see the action that you want to see, then the next day, as long as you didn't spook a whole bunch of stuff, just tear down, go back out, and then the next day just go in there a little bit deeper until you find the next batch at hot sign. Then I think if you do that and you just kind of always have the wind in your face or whatever, and you just take it real slow, give yourself plenty of time to get back in there and get set up, I think that's a lot of times we have some of our best hunts.
So what if, let's throw one more curveball in there.
All right.
Let's say that you have hunted this piece before. You hunted it the year before, but you hunted it like mid-September. So we're imagining this is like opening week, early September, we'll say.
All right.
So you've hunted it in mid-September before, when it was like really blown up, 2 weeks worth of hunting. And you did the approach you talked about. where you kind of staged your way back, but you had to keep on going farther and farther and farther back to finally find where they were daylighting. So for a mid September hunt, you found out you had to be like all the way on the edge of the bed. All the way on the edge of the river almost until you could actually get some daylight activity. So now you know like where the core stuff is. But at the same time, now you're thinking, well, we're only 3 days in. Maybe they're moving more. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if you knew where they were bedded, would you still be kind of careful and start far out and slowly work your way back? Because maybe only 3 days in, they might be coming out that far. Or would you say, well, I know where they're at, and maybe I could kill them, 100 yards in from the field edge, but I could just blast right in there and just get tight to the bedding that I know is very, very deep, but at the same time, you're going to have to push through a lot of cover to get there. Does that change things at all?
I think it might. I think it might change things a little bit. Depends on I feel like it depends on the time that I would have. Like, say if I had 3 days to hunt it, and I'm like, I don't know, they might make it all the way out here, because I think that's also something that we do a lot, or I do a lot, where like you're saying, okay, I'm pretty sure they're going to be right in this hole right back here, and then if it's early on in the season, even though maybe it's 3 days in and there has been some people in there, I think a lot of times, like, I'll push it a little bit too far, too fast, and then I'll blow something out of there and it won't work out. Where if I know I have that time to kind of ease my way back in there, then I'll probably be a little bit more conservative and, hold up a little bit and just see. Because a lot of times, like early in the season, like I was saying, like I'll go too far, and if I'd have just held up back there, and a buck might get up and all of a sudden he's, covering a little bit more ground than what I maybe expected. Because there, one time in Iowa during early muzzleloader season, I had a real similar situation happen, I guess, where I ended up killing a buck. But me and Keith were hunting. It was like these big ridges that all dropped down into bowl, and it was a bunch of nasty willows at the very end of it. But these ridges were like super, super long. So long ways coming from the parking lot, and then it all dropped down into this river. And we would walk in and we'd only make it 100, 200 yards, and there'd be scrapes and rubs, and then I'd bump a doe or something, and I'd be like, oh, I better hold up right here, because I'm like, I don't know. They might be just over this next little bowl or something, coming up to this ridgetop to feed on all these acorns. So we set up, like, I don't know how many days in a row. We set up probably 3 days in a row where we'd go in and set up, and we wouldn't see nothing then. We were bumping does on the way in, so that would be a lot of times where I'd be like, oh, I better stop right here, because what if the buck's like right over the next deal? So we did that for 3 days, I think, at least. But the thing that we were looking at to make our move all the way in there to where we thought the bucks were probably at was, there was a day coming up that was super, super windy. So like 15-mile-an-hour winds was coming up, and it was going to be early muzzleloader season. So we were like, well, let's just kind of pick our way in here, and maybe there is a chance that there's one up on these ridges that's going to pop up here on the top before dark. And so we did that a few different times, and like I said, we didn't see anything. Maybe we had a doe come by real late, but not much. And so then that day when the winds picked up, we were like, all right, we're going for it now. And the interesting thing to me about this whole hunt was the amount of deer that we kicked up on the way in to get to where the buck ended up being at, and where we were kind of thinking he might have been at. And so it was me, Keith, and Greg, and we just kind of went in on that same ridgetop that we'd been hunting. And we were walking past rubs and scrapes and everything else, kicking up does. I mean, we probably kicked up 10 or 15 does up on the ridges. And every time one would get up, I'd be like, oh, crap, did I just screw the pooch here? Or what? And it'd take off and it'd be a doe. And it's like, all right, good. So we'll just keep easing our way back in there. And eventually we got all the way to the back and started dropping off down into the bottom. And at that point, because we were moving pretty slow the whole time, it was like getting to be the last hour of daylight or so. And we just dropped in there. And right as soon as we dropped down in there, I looked up and this buck was coming right out of the bedding cover that we were thinking he might have been in. And then we ended up getting him. But that's one that is pretty similar to that situation like you're talking about, just like making a decision to whether or not you still hunt or stage your way in there, or do you just dive right in. It's hard because it's a hard decision to make a lot of times, especially for me, where I'm like, I don't want to go too far and blow it all up before we even have a solid hunt, inside the bubble of where we think he's at.
Yeah.
And so I really like hunting like that whenever I can just kind of ease my way into a spot and eventually dive all the way in there. But I mean, you run a risk too with that, where it's like maybe you don't go all the way in there, and then the next day you show up and there's already a truck in the parking lot or something, and then you don't get the chance to actually dive all the way in there. So it can be kind of a hard decision to make, but those hunts are pretty fun, I think.
If you have that situation, that let's continue down that line. So let's imagine you start stage hunting. Let's say you're 2 days into your stage hunt. You've hunted the first day kind of conservatively, saw some deer but not quite right. So you say, day 2, I'm going to go in, I'm going to push 100 yards further, let's say. You get in there, now you start seeing some bucks, but it's like a couple nice 2-year-olds, but you just know there's got to be a big old stinky hog back there somewhere. You're just not quite far enough. So now day 3, you show back up. It's a Friday, and there's a truck at the parking lot. And it's kind of, let's just say, like, it's the kind of public land that in your head you're thinking, man, it's going to be really hard to get back to where I want to go without having to walk past this guy. Either this guy's in there, or he's going to be somewhere that I'm going to have to walk right past, or in that zone, Would you say, I'm going for it anyways, or would you bow out?
I'd probably be trying to figure out a way to get in there and hopefully not walk right underneath the guy. But if I had to, if there's like no other way to get in there, and I'm like, well, say there's like this access that you're like, all right, he's got to be back, I'm gonna walk by him, then I probably wouldn't do it. But if there's another way to like loop in there and get back to the stuff that I'm wanting to hunt, then I would go for it. Because who knows? He might be all the way back in there where you're trying to go, or he might be just out of sight out of the parking lot too. So if there's a way that I think that I can get in there without messing his hunt up too much, then I would do it. But if I knew I was going to have to walk right underneath of him, I'd stay out of there. And then I'd probably come back the next day or 2 days later and just dive all the way back in there. But yeah, those can be tricky, and that's why it's nerve-wracking to hold up sometimes and not dive all the way in. But that's just the risk you run, I guess, on the public.
Yeah, that's the truth. All right, it's early October, and you are kind of doing what you just described. You're kind of scout hunting your way in. So you don't have anything pre-mapped out. You don't have a tree picked out. You're gonna kind of still hunt / scout your way in till you find a spot that looks really good. We'll say we're in like Illinois, Missouri kind of location, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you're working your way through, and you spot a buck standing up in a brushy draw. Definitely looks like some brushy kind of bedding cover. He's standing up. He seems like, man, this could be a situation where I can move in closer. But he beds right back down. And as you start working your way towards him, you realize that the wind's a little bit swirly. Let's say it's kind of in a low spot, and you're just noticing the wind's doing some funky stuff. What do you do in that scenario? Would you try to make a move on that deer right then and there, or does that kind of iffy wind make you be more conservative and make you want to do something different? How would you approach it? And let me paint just a little bit more of the picture while you think.
Okay, I'm thinking.
Imagine he's in this kind of low brushy draw. You saw him bed down. I'm imagining like briars, alders, willows, like that kind of brushy low stuff. And you've got like a couple different low ridges that kind of all drop down to this slight depression. So you've got some hardwoods and then this brushy stuff down there in the bottom where you just saw him drop it. Maybe some grass mixed in there. That's as best as I can give you.
Okay. Let's see. What time frame was it?
First week of October.
First week of October. All right. Yeah, I'd probably, if I started, let's say I start diving down in there and I'm starting to get a little bit closer down into the hole that he's in and the wind starts getting a little funky on me, I would probably back up. I would for sure back up to wherever I got good solid wind, whatever direction it is. Say it's back in my face at that point. And then from there, I would take a second and just look at the whole situation. And I would take as much time as I needed to try and figure out how to get in there wherever I think he's going to come out at. I'd probably even look at the map. Even though I'm looking at the deer, I'd probably still look at the map a bunch and think about, all right, where's he going to go from right here? Is he going to come out? Do I think he's going to come out to the north, east, whatever it may be? And then that's when I would make my move on him wherever. I would probably, early October, I'd probably want to get within 100 yards if I could, or closer, depending on the situation. If I could find a spot, say I could find a spot where maybe I just keep bouncing a little bit and out of sight of him, and then I eventually find a spot where, all right, the wind is coming right up this draw, and it's probably going to hold all the way up this draw. Then maybe I'd have a better chance of just kind of easing straight down at him and getting as close as I could. But that's the thing. And that's where they're at a lot of times, is wherever the wind is just doing like this. Yeah. So, but that's also a fun situation to be in if you have one spotted and you can just kind of, if you have enough time before he gets up and gets out of there, just take a step back and try and figure it out, I guess. That's the funnest part, I think, about hunting and everything, is just all the strategy and like the chess match that goes into it, stuff like that. But in that situation, I would for sure, especially if I'm on an out-of-state hunt and I got eyes on a buck down in this bottom, I'd be trying to do whatever I could to get within killing distance of him, I guess.
So okay, so you're throwing milkweed or something, checking wind all the way. You get to a spot where you're like, hey, I actually think the wind might work here. You find your spot that you just described, which is as close as you can get. But here's something that I've often debated. When you're in the situation where you know there's a buck bedded in there, and it's kind of low brushy stuff, right? So you can't see him right now, but if you get higher, can he see you? I'm wondering at this point, do I just hunt on the ground, or do I try to slip in some sticks and saddle and get up in the tree and give myself a slightly better position or slightly, just better circumstances? Would you risk trying to get up in a tree in that situation, or just stay on the ground and make sure that there's no chance he sees you?
In that situation, I'd probably be staying on the ground, I think. But that's the thing. It's like hard, if you're not actually looking at the whole deal, it would be hard to decide what you're going to do. But I feel like I would probably stay on the ground, because I feel like I'd be maneuvering around as much as I needed to find the spot that I thought would work. Like, I'm imagining he's in this bowl right here, but you got these little finger ridges that are kind of dropping down all the way around him pretty much. And that's where I'd be like trying to figure out. I'd be taking quite a bit of time, like you said, dropping milkweed, trying to find that spot where maybe there's a little bit of a more steady wind as I get in there closer. And I think I would stay on the ground, because then if he does get up and he does something a little different than what you thought, you might still have a little bit of a chance to maneuver a little bit and try and get in front of him. And climbing up in the tree, if you climb up in the tree and you're in sight of him, I think then you might blow him out of there before he even gets up and does whatever he's going to do. So, and here's another thought on it. Say he gets up and does something a little different than what I think, and it's like, oh boy, he's gonna walk right up there and get our wind or something. Say if I have a chance to slip out of a draw or something and get out of there before he can get to our wind, then I would do that too, and that would be an advantage of being on the ground, because then you might have another chance at him the next day if he's in that same spot or somewhere close.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was gonna ask a follow up, kind of similar to that. I was wondering, and I've got another question kind of around this same challenge, but I'm curious what you would do in this specific scenario. Imagine you did this, you found this spot, you found this little draw where it's kind of sucking your wind down. You finally get that consistent wind. You set up on the ground. You're happy with the situation. You're just counting down. You're just waiting. It's 3 hours to dark. It's 2 hours to dark. It's 1 hour to dark. And now you're thinking, like, any minute now, this buck's going to get up and this thing's going to happen. And then at that 1 hour mark, your consistent wind isn't consistent anymore. It starts doing the swirly thing that it was doing everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
With it being the last hour of daylight, are you like, I'm out, and you slip out of that draw some way? Or do you say, well, it's the last hour, it is what it is, and just play it out and see what happens? Well, how do you handle that?
That's tough. I would probably at that point if it's the last hour and I'm thinking I'm in the right spot, but the wind is wrong. I would probably have a hard time. Leaving, but I don't necessarily think leaving would be the wrong answer.
Well, you know how it is. Sometimes you get it where the wind's like not always wrong. Like it's good for 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes like don't come out right now. But then 5 minutes later, it's like, okay, now if you came right now, it would work. Those days.
Yeah, for sure. And there was one hunt that I'm thinking of that's real similar to this, but it was in the morning, and this was out in Wyoming. And me and Greg had spotted this buck. He walks all the way down this river bottom. We watch him for a long time. Lays down, and he's like right below us. And we're up on like this, it drops off, it's this big bluff. So we're like looking right down at him. And so we make our move and get down in there. And it's the same situation you're talking about, except it's not in the afternoon. So I don't know when this thing's going to get up or what he's going to do, but we slip all the way in there and get to like 20 yards of him. And we're sitting there, and all I can see is like part of his rack just sitting there, and it's moving every once in a while, just a little bit. And our wind was pretty consistent, like blowing parallel to him, I guess. And we sat there for a long time, like a couple hours. But our wind, every once in a while, it would make like this weird flipping around. And he wouldn't spook. So we're like, all right, well, it must be all right. It must just be kind of swirling real quick, but not getting to him, getting out of there. So we sat there, and he never got up. And all of a sudden it did the same thing. And then that time he caught us, and he was out of there immediately. So that's part of it too, is like running that risk. I think it's just a hard situation to make that decision. But like, I feel like that's the difference a lot sometimes, is if I'm out of state and we're on like the third day of the hunt at that point, and we're within 20 yards of this deer, but our wind is kind of acting a little funky. Then at that point, I'm sticking it out. I'm going to see if he stands up or what he does. And if he just, all you had to do is stand up for just a few seconds, and then I'd probably got a good shot at him. But at that point, yeah, I was in there it was either make or break at that point, and we just had one gust of wind that switched on us and he got us. But going back to your situation, like you're talking about in that hole, I'm probably going to stick it out if I'm in there in the spot that I want to be in and our wind starts acting a little bit funky. I'd probably be like, well, we're just going to see what happens, because in an hour that wind could still switch quite a bit at that point.
Yeah.
Like thermals might start dropping and that might screw you too, but at least you don't necessarily always know exactly what that wind's going to do, so you might just stick it out a little bit, or I would maybe stick it out a little bit longer and just see what might change, and maybe I can still have a chance at that point, I guess.
Well, and I feel like in these kinds of scenarios, especially public or heavily pressured private, there are certain special scenarios where sometimes you just got to risk it.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you have eyes on a good buck, that's such a special thing. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't get eyes on a buck all that often where you know, oh, he's right here. Usually you're saying, I think he's here or I think
Yeah.
he's there. But when you know he's right there, you kind of got to just send it in a lot of cases.
You got to go
know?
for it at that point. I think the same thing. Like you're saying, it's so hard to, especially if you are watching him stand up and lay back down. I mean, that's a lot of times the best opportunity you're going to get. So you might as well just stick it out and see if you can make it happen in that first try at him. Because chances are, if you back out of there, say, and maybe he doesn't get your wind right off the bat, good chance he's going to get up and walk out of there and kind of be meandering around and catch your ground scent anyway and be somewhere else tomorrow. So, anytime you get in that situation, I feel like you just got to try and make something work. And that's a fun situation to be in too. So,
yeah. All right. I'm giving you a new one. These are all kind of slight iterations on something similar because I'm kind of riffing on things that you guys often do.
Yeah.
So again, let's say you're in Pennsylvania this time, mid-October, and again you're working some relatively new stuff. Like again, you're not hunting your back 40. This is like some stuff that you don't fully know. You've map scouted it. You've thought about it, but you're gonna do your kind of scout your way in. Stage hunt is your plan. But as you walk through, everything's kind of the same. There's a little rub here, there's a scrape here, there's some trails here. But let's say you start at noon, and from noon to 1, it's still kind of that. And from 1 to 3, it's still kind of, there's a little bit here, a little bit here. But nothing is screaming. Nothing is like, oh yes. Like you're not bumping a bunch of does, like you said earlier. You're not coming across the red hot, huge scrape on the edge of nasty thick cover. It's just kind of like open hardwoods, some mixed cover here and there, but nothing screams like stop. Would you just keep scouting your way in all the way till dark? Or will it be like the last hour of daylight and you're finally like, all right, well, nothing seems good. I'm just going to sit and watch for the last hour. Like, how would you handle that scenario where you scout and never find the, flashing red light, stop here situation?
In that situation, I would probably I would keep going until probably an hour before dark or something. If I'm not finding exactly what I want to find or whatever, something that says, yeah, I better stop, I'd probably just keep going until about an hour before dark, and then I might just set up and just see what happens. And maybe you just get lucky and catch some deer movement at that point. Because, I mean, if you're finding sign all the way up through somewhere, and maybe it's not anything crazy, I mean, there's probably a good amount of deer around. So you might as well just set up and just see what happens rather than just keep walking. And then next thing you know, you walk up on a buck and blow them out of there. So I would probably just, scout until hour before dark. And maybe I found a scrape or a rub or whatever it may be. I'd just set up on that and just kind of see what happens, and then regroup for the next day and try and figure out what do I want, where do I want to adjust to, or what do I want to do for the next day or two. But I feel like we run into that situation a lot too, where it's like especially out of state where you're like, you keep
Mhm.
walking and walking and walking, and you're like, nothing is making me want to stop.
Yeah.
And that's a hard situation to decide what to do, where you're just like, and at that point, you're so frustrated. You've been walking since noon or something. You're like, well, let's just throw up and stand and sit here, or just sit on the ground and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so another scenario where I ran into that pretty much the same exact thing that you just described. I ran into that last year in Iowa, and I had been running trail or cell cameras all fall, and at this point, it's like November 3rd or something. So I mean, things are really going at that point, and me and Walker, who I was hunting with, we were not doing that well at that point. We were like, could not get on deer. We were like chasing cell cameras around, get a picture of a big buck over here, and I'd be like, oh, we got to go try that. Just like spreading myself way too thin, where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go hunt over here, and then the next day I'm gonna go hunt 20 miles over this way in a completely different piece of public. So when this scenario came up, I had pretty much just totally wrote off all the pictures that I'd gotten or anything. I'm like, I'm not hunting around the cameras, not doing any of that. We're gonna go into this piece of public that we hadn't hunted at that point in the fall. But I was like, we're just gonna scout our way into it and see what happens, because we got to just try something different at this point, basically. And that was the situation, though. We walked in there. It was this big ridge system. Found like a little tiny rub here. Found another little rub over here. Like, not much, really. And it was to a point where I was just like so frustrated. We weren't finding anything that I was like, all right, yeah, let's set up on this. And so I just ended up sitting down on the ground up against this tree, and it was this huge bowl that kind of ran down, so we could see a good ways down through there. And it was only 40 minutes till dark, and it was cloudy that day, so it was probably less than that even. I mean, I just sat down on a tree, and we just kind of sat there and took a break, and it was like, all right, well, probably not going to kill a deer tonight. So we might as well just sit down and just see what happens, and we're probably not going to see anything. We'll probably just walk out and regroup tomorrow. So we sit down, and like 5 minutes goes by, and I look up, and there's this huge buck standing clear down in the bottom of the bowl. And I'm like, holy crap, Walker. I'm like, there's a big buck down here. And we just sit there, and I don't know what this buck was doing or anything, but I mean, he stood up, and then he laid back down, and that was the whole rest of the afternoon. There was only like 20 minutes or something of daylight at that point. And yeah, he just kind of laid there. I don't know if he had been shot or what. That's kind of what I thought afterwards. But anyway, that don't necessarily matter. But that's the situation that we were in. Like, we weren't finding anything that, really tipped us off to, all right, we got to sit right here. And I think sometimes that's the best thing you can do, just kind of sit down wherever. I mean, ideally, you'd make an actual setup. At that point, we were just sitting up against a tree, but I just looked down, and there was a big buck standing there, and I'm like, there's obviously some deer around at that point, but nothing like scorching hot. And then the next day, we went in there, same spot. Didn't set up in the same exact spot, but in the same general area. And we saw quite a few deer the next day. I mean, we saw a couple of little bucks, quite a few does, and so pretty decent hunt, I guess, the next day. But those are always some of the most frustrating situations that I feel like I'll get in, where you just walk and walk and walk, and you just finding these little tiny rubs or whatever, nothing too crazy. And I think if you're committed to that spot for that afternoon, I think that's the best thing you can do if you get down to the last hour and a half of daylight. Just make a decent setup and see what happens, and maybe you'll learn something from that, or you might see some deer. So,
or just practice some Zen self-talk and try to calm yourself down from the frustration of the rest of the day.
Yeah, and sometimes that's probably the best thing you can do anyway, because then otherwise your mind's gonna be in a whirlwind for the next day if you can just sit down and look at the map and try and at that point just start coming up with a game plan for the next day a lot of times. But
regroup a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts in those situations just to make some sort of setup and just see what happens, and never know what might go down.
All right, so remember that first question I gave you about having one day in August to go and do like a 12-hour scout, right? So let's go back there. Let's say you did that one day of scouting and it was amazing. Like when you walked through there, you were bumping deer all over the place. You bumped a 170 off a bed. You saw just ripped up old rubs from the year before. You found just like scorched earth, incredible looking activity. And you knew like, man, when I come back in November, this place is going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You drove around the last hour of daylight in the fields and the surrounding ag, and you saw a lot of deer. You saw a bunch of good bucks, like everything you could possibly ask for, you saw in that day of scouting, all right?
Mm-hmm.
You return in November, first week of November, and you pull up to that first parking lot that you looked at in August. There's 3 cars there. You pull up to the second parking lot. There's a car there. You go to the third parking lot. There's a car there. There's 2 guys getting out some portable tree stands on the back tailgate of one of those trucks. Like everywhere you go, you're seeing people. Is that enough to like say, screw it, I'm going to go to some other property that we didn't get to scout this summer? Or would you, or what would you do? What would you do in this scenario where the scouting was so exciting, you had such high hopes, but now you arrive and there's people everywhere?
At that point, I'd probably back out and go somewhere else that I hadn't scouted. Maybe something that looks kind of similar to the habitat that I did scout, where I found all that real good sign. But also, I could see myself, say I did see all them people or whatever, I might still try and find a little spot here or there where I could slip in and just try it for a day and just see what happens, especially if there's, like you're saying, there's deer all over the place. I would still probably do a little bit of driving around, looking for a spot where maybe there's not somebody at, or just like a little pocket of ground where, where there's not somebody at, and just try it. But then that would be one where I might try it for an afternoon, and if I don't see some action or whatever, then I'm pulling the plug probably pretty quick. But it is hard sometimes when you find a spot that you're so excited about, and then you get back there and then you just got to be like, well, this probably isn't the best spot, so I'm just gonna bounce and head to the next spot. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. A lot of time, I mean, I feel like the more you do it, where it's like you go on these hunts out of state, and maybe you're in a spot and you're just like hunting one day after the next and not seeing what you want to see, and you'll just get to a point where you're like, all right, yep, it's time to pull the plug. And a lot of times that's an exciting thing to do, I think, because I feel like a lot of the times we'll be, in this cycle of hunting this same spot, not the same exact spot, but the same public area, say, and it's just not quite working. And then you say, all right, time to head to the next spot. And I feel like a lot of times that's when things turn around for you on that trip. Because we do that all the time, where will kind of get married to a spot right off the bat, and you're like, oh, this is gonna work, this is gonna work, this is gonna work, and then it just doesn't and doesn't and doesn't, and then you're like, all right, gotta go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm thinking in Oklahoma a couple years ago, me and Jake were hunting this spot. Everything looked really good, a lot of deer around, but also a lot of people. And this was November time frame, like first week or two of November. And we were hunting. Jake had actually shot a buck in that piece of public that we started at. And we were seeing, decent bucks here and there, but then we'd run into people and we'd run into people. And then eventually we were like, let's just ditch this, go try and find something else. So we ended up, we were driving like a long ways across the state. We were just going to go clear across the state to some real small chunks. And on the way there was a tiny little piece of public, or it looked tiny on the map. It was decent size once you got there, but no trees hardly at all. Like nothing on the map looked like trees or like a block of woods or anything like that. And we just pulled in there and got there like 20 minutes before dark and started seeing bucks left and right. And then the next day got up and I ended up shooting one there the very next morning. So
wow.
that's where I guess I feel like especially if me and Jake go somewhere like that and then you're just not seeing what you want to see, or you're just not getting into quite as much as you want to, and you just pick up and move and at some point run into a spot and you're like, all right, yeah, this is it now.
Location can make all the difference.
No, for sure. Yeah.
That's the truth.
But yeah.
All right. Let's riff on this just a little bit more, a little bit on like the dealing with people situation. Let's say that we'll stick in the same spot. So same place you scouted in the summer, same place looked incredible. Let's say you found just like that epic buck bedding kind of sound like a buck nest kind of spot. And you're going to hunt it. It's like late October, like October 23rd or 24th, let's say. That's when you return for this trip. First time hunting it. You've got incredibly high hopes for it. There's not a bunch of trucks at the parking lot this time. So let's pretend that last scenario didn't happen. So instead, you show up on the 24th for the first time. No other trucks. The buck nest or whatever it looks like, man, this is going to be great. You slip in, you get tight, relatively tight to it, sky high. This is it. And 3 hours before dark, here comes another hunter, and he goes past you even closer to the buck bedding. Let's say like you can't see, let's say like there's a little bit of a gap between where you are and where you think those bucks are. He walks by within sight of you and goes past you. What do you do in that scenario? Do you hunt it? Do you bail and go try to find something new?
If I'm already, you're saying I'm already set up in there?
Yep. You're in a tree. Let's say you're up in your saddle and he goes past you, goes deeper than you. But you know that he went right into the hole. He's in there somewhere.
I'm probably gonna hunt it at that point. I'm gonna stay in there and just see what happens, because maybe he walks in there and bumps one out of there and it comes right by me. But yeah, I'd probably stay in there at that point for at least a little bit longer, couple hours or whatever, and just try it. But then if I'm just sitting there and just can't get that guy going in there out of my mind, then at that point I would probably be like, all right, yeah, let's go try something different. I don't like that at that point. But if he walked in there, yeah, I'd probably sit it. If it didn't work out, then at that point, that's when I'd regroup after maybe a couple hours, especially if it's getting to that time of the year, like October 24th, then I'd be more likely to stick it out in there for a little bit longer and just see what happens. Because you never know. And him walking in there, maybe that works to your advantage, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then at that point, if it didn't work out, if I was there for the whole rest of the afternoon, and he had walked in there past me, then I probably wouldn't be coming back. I'd probably climb down and make an adjustment, go somewhere else, try something different at that point.
Yep. Makes sense. All right. Let's fast forward back to the rut. And you are set up in a location that is just screaming hot with rut sign, fresh rubs, fresh scrapes, and you're in this terrific little like terrain pinch point. Maybe it's a saddle and a ridge, and there's a creek crossing, and there's several different things that make this seem like a dynamite rut spot. You sit it the entire day, don't see a single deer. Day 2, you go back and keep hunting it, or because everything else looks so great, or is a full day with 0 deer enough for you to say, screw this, I'm looking for something new?
I would probably want to try it again, especially if I was in there, didn't see anybody else, then I would want to try it again. If I was in there and then, let's say I saw somebody else walking by me or something like that, and I didn't see any deer, then yeah, I'd probably be bailing out, going trying something different, trying to find the action. But yeah, if there was a bunch of sign in there, I'd be trying that spot again. Maybe not that exact spot, but I would be coming back in there the next day and maybe hunting that same spot in the morning, the same tree even. And if that didn't work out, then I'd be getting down and doing some walking around in there, looking for the next setup that I think would work, and try that. And I think that's the whole thing about the rut too. Like, if you're in a spot like that where there's tons of sign and you're not seeing really good action, or maybe not really good action, but you're not seeing a little bit of action, you got to get down and go try and find it. Because otherwise, I mean, that's what happened to us this year. Same thing. Like, me and Walker scouted this spot one day, and it was like October 29th. Tons of sign in there. Crazy. I mean, like rubs and scrapes everywhere, coming right out of this block of thick cover. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, we were both standing there like, this is the spot. But we didn't hunt it that day because it was super warm that afternoon, and I wanted to just bounce around and find a bunch of different spots to go back to, because we were about to have some really good weather coming up. So I'm like, all right, let's just scout, find spots, mark spots, and we'll come back and hunt them. So I hang a trail camera in there that afternoon, and right at dark, 2 big bucks come right in front of the trail camera, which is right where I would have set up.
God.
If I didn't hang the camera there, I would have just set up there and hunted on that trail that they walked out on. So then the next day, we go in there, hunt it the whole day, and we saw one small buck all day, I think, and had one guy walk in on us before daylight. So that's the spot that was going through my mind as you were going through that situation, I guess. And so at that point, I'm like, that was a hard spot for me to pick up and leave, because I had just gotten 2 really nice bucks on there the day before. So we hunted all day, don't see anything, and I want to say we went back in there the next morning and tried it one more time and didn't see nothing. And then from there, we were like, all right, nope, we're pulling the plug on this. We're not coming back. And kind of the crazy thing is, I didn't hardly have anything on that trail camera either after that. So, but in that situation, what we did was we backed out after giving it a full day, and then next morning or something like that. And then we just started bouncing around, either in the car or in the boat, whatever. And then we started getting back on deer after that. So that was one scenario where it was like, I mean, crazy good sign in there. Just had picture of 2 bucks go through there the day before. hunted it for the whole next day, next morning, whatever, and it was just completely dead in there. And then that's when we pulled the plug after that. But that was I remember that being really hard for me to be like, all right, we got to go try something else because this wasn't working. So, but yeah.
What about a slight variation on that? Let's say like you've got this amazing spot and you go in there and you set up, and let's say it's like a tight kind of location where because of the creek crossing, because of the way the terrain funnels, you really feel confident. Like, man, if a deer comes through here, he's going to come through here at the X. And so you set up in range of the X. And it's kind of a funky tree to get up into, but once you're up in there, it's like great cover, perfect shooting range of the X. Like, you are feeling very, very confident. The sign is incredible. But as the day progresses, let's say the first couple hours of daylight, you see a bunch of deer and 3 bucks all come through, but they're all like 20 yards out of range. For whatever reason, you felt like the X that you thought was where they'd all be, they're just doing something slightly off of that, and they're out at 50 yards every single time. These 3 bucks that all came through at different times, they're all just out of range. Do you move in any kind of way after the first few hours, or do you say, well, this still should work eventually? Do you stick it out? Do you shift your location by 20 yards? Or what do you do in that scenario after you've seen 3 bucks pass through just out of range, even though everything else looks so good?
At that point, yeah, I'd be getting down and moving over there wherever I'd seen them all going through. If I saw a cup, it would probably be 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 bucks. If 2 or 3 bucks went through the same spot, yeah, I'd be climbing down and getting over there for the rest of the day probably. But yeah, which that's a great scenario to be in too. I think, like, even if you are sitting there thinking, oh, they should come right through here, and then you see several of them do the same thing, it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting right over there and sitting it out. And then that's when you'd move over there, and then you'd hear something behind you, and you'd look back, and one be walking right where you just sitting at. That's exactly what would probably happen.
So true.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, that's so true. When would you make that move? Would you, let's say, like, the 3rd buck moves through, in your head, you're like, okay, I gotta move, but it's 9 o'clock. Do you move like as soon as that buck's out of sight? Are you, I'm doing it right away, or are you gonna wait till a certain time of day when you think the least deer activity is gonna be, or when do you decide to pull that plug and actually physically tear everything down?
I would probably, as soon as that 3rd buck went through, I'd probably be climbing down as fast as I could to get over there. I think, because, and that's one of those decisions where it's like you sit there and hesitate just a little bit, and you're like, oh, should I move or should I not? It'd be hard. It's hard to make that decision to do it, because then next thing you know, you're climbing down, and another one's coming, you spook him. But I think especially if you see like 3 of them do that, I'd be climbing down as fast as I could to get over there. And maybe you don't even move over there and climb a tree if you're real worried about, like, say it's like you said, 9 o'clock in the morning and in the middle of the rut or something. Yeah, I would be like getting over there as fast as I could, and maybe I wouldn't even climb a tree at that point, because that's another situation where it's like, then you're leaving yourself, as long as it takes you to climb the tree and get everything set up, that's even more time that you're taking to not be ready to shoot one if it walks down that trail. So I'd just be probably getting over there and trying to find a setup on the ground somewhere to where I don't have to mess around with anything, the least amount of time as I could. I'd just dive in there and get ready to shoot the next one that walked down through there. But that
makes sense. All right, Ted, we're gonna shift to the last little section of this gauntlet, which is like a quick rapid fire session here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give you a question. You have to give me your like gut instinct answer, 1-word answers only. And then we're going to run through like 5 of these real quick.
One word. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you like an option, this or this, and then you choose. All right. So, does the moon impact deer movement? Yes or no?
I have no idea. So that's my answer. I really don't know.
Fair enough.
I've paid attention to it. I know this isn't a one-word answer, but I've paid attention to it a little bit, but not enough to actually have my opinion on it where I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, or no. I think maybe yeah, but I don't know for sure. That's the thing though. Here's the thing. I don't ever pay attention to it because I'm lucky to do what I do. So I'm going hunting every day anyway. Yeah. So I never really pay that much attention to it. I think if I had limited time to hunt, I would pay a lot more attention to it just because I think that might give me an advantage of, I'm going to take this day to get out there and hunt or whatever. If there is a moon phase that's going through that looks good, if I've seen that work before, but yeah, I just don't pay attention to it enough to say yes or no, I guess. All right, I'll do one word answers from now on. I'll try.
you got a free pass on that one. Would you take a 50-yard shot at a whitetail with your bow? Yes or no?
I'm gonna say no, but yeah.
If you could only have one of these for the rest of your hunting life, which would you choose? You have to pick either rattling antlers or grunt tube.
Grunt tube.
Expandable or fixed blade broadheads for the rest of your life?
Fixed blade.
Should you stop a moving buck with some kind of sound before shooting? Yes or no?
Yes.
If you could pick only one of these times to scout, so you only get one of these windows for your scouting for the whole year, which would you take? You can scout like winter, spring, you can scout summer, or you can have in season. Which of those 3 would you pick? You can only pick one.
Probably in season.
Yeah. All right. If you had to get a buck killed, doesn't matter how old of a buck, doesn't matter how big a buck, but a buck has to die today. And you could pick only one THP team member to do it. So who's the one who'd give you the very best chance to get any caliber buck, but a buck dead on the ground? Who would be the team member you'd pick to give you your best bet to get one dead?
Gosh. I'll say Jake.
Okay. There you go. All right. Now here's one where you don't need to have just one word. You can give me like a full explanation here, okay? I'm going to tell you that I rule the world. I have control of your hunting privileges now, okay? And I'm going to take away your ability to hunt for the rest of your life unless you kill a mature buck this year. You got to kill a mature buck this year. If you do, then you can keep on hunting. If you don't get to hunt anymore. This is very high stakes. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. You only get one day to do it, and you get one location to do it, like a specific ambush location, like this tree or this spot in the ground or whatever. You get to pick what date on the calendar you think would give you your best chance, and then you need to describe to me what that perfect spot would be that you would want to spend this one day at to kill this very important buck. Pick your date. Tell me about the spot. It can be an imaginary hypothetical spot, or you could think of an actual place that you think is amazing for that day and describe that.
I mean, I'll tell you, I can think of one right away. It's the buck that I shot last year, actually. It was November 8th, and we were in a spot where there was it was just a draw. So it was like a perfect wooded draw. It was probably 80 yards wide, maybe 100 yards wide. And there was CRP out on the left side, and then just like some nasty thick stuff on the right side, just like honeysuckle and stuff that you pretty much just have to crawl through. And a lot of surrounding area was like that. It was like a lot of really, really thick cover, basically, like stuff you'd think about going rabbit hunting in.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was the day that it was crazy. I mean, we were seeing bucks left and right, and a couple really big bucks, and then but it was just like the perfect scenario. It was early in the morning, thermals were dropping back down behind us, and no, there wasn't a single deer that got our wind or anything like that. But that would be my choice of day and where I would sit, because we've seen some deer in that spot years before too, on that same exact day. So yeah, that'd be where I'd go.
What makes that spot so incredible? Do you think it's just because of that thick, nasty cover and then kind of like a relatively tight pinch with the draw? Is it the fact that wind sucks down there? What makes that so good, do you think?
I think that it's a spot where there's so much of that thick cover where I don't think, I guess, let me say here, I don't think there's bucks there all year round. Like, I don't know that there's necessarily a buck that's living there early in the season or anything, because there's not like a whole bunch of food around or anything like that. It's just tons of super, super thick cover all around it. And I think there's a lot of does in there. So I think there's does in there probably most of the year. And then as the rut gets ramped up, since there are so many does there, there's more does that come into heat and whatever in that specific spot. And then the bucks just kind of have these little travel spots that they kind of work through. And yeah, so I'm trying to think about it even further in detail than that. But I think that's the main thing. Just like tons of does in there, not a lot of people around there, and eventually, as the rut gets ramped up, I think since there are so many does there, you get this, movement of, or more consistent movement of bucks going through there, checking scent or whatever. Because I mean, we were in there for like 2 days this year, and I don't know that we saw the same buck twice. It was like several different bucks every time we'd see one. It was a different buck.
Cycling through.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. But that's where I'd go if I had to pick a spot in a day. That's where I'd go.
Sounds like my kind of spot. I like the sounds of it. Well, Ted, you passed. You survived the What Would You Do gauntlet. Before I let you go, though, could you give folks just any kind of preview that folks should be looking forward to? Are there any like really exciting trips that you guys have coming up? Is there anything new coming up with THP? Any specific projects or places or anything you want us to check out?
This year, the hunt that I drew an elk tag this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then we got some more unique trips out west, I guess, some muzzleloader hunts and stuff like that coming up. So
cool.
Kind of a fun fall coming up. It seems like Warb's got an elk tag down in Arizona, so it seems like there's going to be a wide variety of different types of hunts this year coming up. So I think we're all pretty excited about this fall, just for that reason, because there's more drawn hunts and like different types of hunts than what we're doing a lot of the time, I guess. So it should be a pretty fun fall, pretty diverse type of hunting going on throughout the whole fall.
Nice to have that kind of change of pace sometimes with the hunting season.
Oh, for sure. It'll be fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to following along, Ted. I appreciate everything you guys do. Appreciate you taking time here today to talk through all this. It, without a doubt, has got me more fired up than even before. I'm ready to get after it.
Yeah, me too.
Any day, just a few more weeks, and it'll be just about here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm excited about it.
All right, Ted. Well, thank you, and good luck this season.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right, and that's a wrap for today's show. Appreciate you joining me. I thoroughly enjoyed this chat with Ted. I'm very excited for next week. We have a really, really good slate this month of folks that are going to be running through these hypotheticals. There's going to be some other public land warriors, kind of like Ted, and then there's going to be some private land guys and everything in between. So it's going to be great. Stick around, stay tuned. It's going to be a great month, and then before we know it, hunting season's going to be here. So until next time, thanks for tuning in, and stay wired to hunt.